Hi, I'll pick up where I left off in the last video from the chapter on the Mordent in Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art, das Klavier zu spielen. Bei Gelegenheit des Mordenten muss ich einer willkürlichen Manier Erwähnung tun, welche wir zuweilen in langsamen Stücken im Anfang und vor Formaten oder Pausen, besonders von den Sängern, hören. Die simplen Noten, wo diese Manier statt hat, samt ihrer Ausführung, finden wir unter Figur 79. Da diese letztere den Noten eines Mordenten vollkommen ähnlich ist und der Fall, wo man sie trifft, einen Mordenten leidet, nur dass nach dem gewöhnlichen Vortrag zu bald vorbeigehen dürfte, so kann man diese Manier für einen langsamen Mordenten ansehen, welcher außer diesem Falle verwerflich ist. So, an extra variant of Mordent. I don't know if singers are aware of this. There's a chance they're not. But it could be something that could be suggested if one finds oneself in a position where they are accompanying a singer. And the singer might be happy with the suggestion. Because if this slow mordent was done especially by singers, they must have been pleased with it. It comes in slow pieces at the beginning and before fermatas and rests. Again, with the long bow, Bach shows in figure 79 how it appears in the score and then how it's performed. The first could be the beginning of a piece, and we as well see it's before a rest. We could as well be so bold as to identify that as an Einschnitt, a cut from what we've learned, and so see it as when a slow piece opens with an Einschnitt. We can as well imagine a tempo where a regular mordent would be over too soon. So it could be kept in mind. One should perhaps also notice that the base over which the slow mordent takes place in each example is stationary. So Bach will have indicated the base for a reason. You won't ever learn this from the likes of Bernreich or whatever, but there's nothing is in there like by chance or, you know, through apps. It just, nothing ever wound up there because it just happened to be there. Bach pays the greatest attention to detail and to what he has. There's so much extra in what Bach presents that's there to be discovered for the, you know, not the people who already know it all like you find in the Roll of Honor, but for the people who are really interested in finding the truth, in finding the correct answer, in entering the world of music. So I would say that stationary bass, you know, it stays on the C in each example where the slow mordent takes place. So I would say that could be something to look out for as a necessary component for its use, not to be objectionable. So let's say you are accompanying that singer, and you don't want to make a suggestion where that's either wrong or makes, you know, detracts from the piece. So you'd want to be sure that it is actually the spot where this slow mordent could take place. And one point you could look for to be extra sure is if the bass is stationary, and then you have something to check before you go suggesting something that's half-baked, or, you know, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So that would be one thing to look out for there, besides seeing if it comes before a piece or before a rest or before a fermata. If it becomes, you know, or if it comes at the beginning of the piece, that would be something else. The proportionate relationship of how the notes of the mordent are divided up is the same in both examples, with the last two notes sharing equally the second half of the note's value. The added fermata sign in the execution of the second example would as well be something to note, with regard to how fermatas were performed. And figure 56a that we looked at in the previous video, that the fermata sign over the G might not be in the score, but rather an element of the performance of the fermata over the A. So how fermatas are performed. That it's not just the note the fermata is over that is held longer than its value, but also the note before, maybe. There's a chapter on the decoration of fermatas where that will become relevant. And when I get to that, I'll be connecting this and figure 56a to what we see in the chapter in search of the correct answer. So that's just something extra that I noted there, and I'll point that out as we see it. That in a 56A, that little fermata sign over the appoggiatura, that Bach has that in there to, so it's clear, so it matches the text. But that is not necessarily how it might appear in the score. There might not be that might be, sort of known. Or assumed that it's known by, the publisher, the printer of the music. So yeah, that now concludes the chapter on the Mordent. And the next chapter is on the Anschlag, which I'm not sure how I'll translate that. Maybe the attack. Anschlag can mean attack or stroke. The stroke, I'm not sure what to call it, but we'll be doing that. And this'll continue, this'll go deeper into what I was talking about now, about the use of mordents in Mozart, and all, the role of honor and what they do. And what we're going to have is an egregious example of that coming up now, because the Anschlag as well doesn't exist in Mozart, according to the role of honor. And they're going to find themselves, the role of honor are going to find themselves in serious trouble. I mean, they're going to be put in a spot. And if you can imagine, let's say Kissen, sitting at a piano and being questioned by Bach, and that Kissen has to defend his interpretations, he's going to find himself in a serious predicament where he has nothing to say. And he's going to find himself in a position where, in order to defend his interpretations, he's going to have to dismiss what Bach says. And he's going to have to find good reason to dismiss it. So that's coming up. So we're going to... So the plot will thicken in this chapter on the Anschlag. And the role of honor will find themselves in a hole, in a corner that they can't get out of. And when we get to the chapters after that, it's going to plot, the plot will thicken even more, where they find themselves, they have no way out, no escape, and they'll truly feel the cage they're in. Yeah, so the chapters coming up are not as, aside from the chapter on performance, which is the last, there's 3 sections of the book, of this book 1 of Bach's Versuch. There's 3 sections. The first is fingering, the second is ornamentation, and the third is performance. And that's like the trinity of piano playing. And AC fingering belongs there with, the fingering and the finger position. That's belongs with the fingering, and ornamentation. And then you can see how ornamentation, it does belong to the trinity of piano playing, and you can see what a major role it plays in how bad the role of honor are, in how low their standard is. And I know that people can't hear that because they are being people learn to recognize the things, you know, because they're, you know, on the basis of what they're used to hearing, but they can't tell it on the basis of the quality. So if they hear Sokolov play and they hear it sounding like it's always like they understand it to sound, that replaces the actual standard of his playing. And there are mistakes that can be made that don't involve hitting wrong notes. And the mistakes, but they are mistakes that are much, much greater and bigger and detrimental than a wrong note would be, or a smudge note. So that's coming up. Should I get to the end of this book one, it's gonna be you know, this is like, you know, there's so many myths and false beliefs in terms of the past. Mozart now is playing now. He's standing up. You can put my Mozart performances next to any of the Roll of Honor, and you can see how Mozart would fare against the best the Roll of Honor has to offer. And from the Roll of Honor, I can hear that if you were to believe the Roll of Honor, you wouldn't think that Mozart had a mature thought in his life, that he had a deep experience in his entire life. Like, they'll play the K570. I mean, this is composed. There's the opening of the Rex Tremende in there, of his Requiem. He was having visions of his own Requiem. And if you were to believe the Roll of Honor, well, then that's just a piece for students, a piece for kids with not a single profound or deep thought. But as far as I'm concerned, or the effect it has on me, that Rex Tremende opening, it adds a melancholy, and it's a totally different Mozart. It's a Mozart, a grown up. It's a virtuoso of the highest order, with a power and a potency that, you know, that sets him apart from the entire list of the Roll of Honor. That is in it. The Roll of Honor recognise none of it, and it's not to be heard. But you can hear, that can be heard. I can hear in K570, I can hear late Mozart, And late Mozart is taking, he's going in a similar direction as late Beethoven. It's just too subtle for the roll of honor to pick up on. I forget what my point was saying that was, but it's going to get more, as I go on, it gets more and more comprehensive, more and more, tangible what Bach's attitude is, what he says, how he sees the stuff. And I'm going to be connecting it all, and you'll see that what I'm saying is actually true. And and it'll come ever clearer that Bach is actually talking about the roll of honor. He's talking about the Kissens and Sokolovs, and there were Kissens and Sokolovs back around then in Bach's time. They were there. It hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. And Mozart's, he's as fresh and as, I don't know what to call it, but he has a command that can still make people, can shut them up and make them sit up and notice today. There's no, if you saw Mozart today, and you can look at my playing and try and find where it couldn't possibly be Mozart. Try and find the note that's less than perfect. The voicing, the placement of it, the attack, the end of the note. Try and find any note that couldn't possibly be Mozart. And you'll see that Mozart was a grown-up. Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, so the chapter is over on the Mordents, and the chapter on the Anschlag is up next. And like I said, it's a major one. It's an egregious, it's a giant gap in the roll of honors teaching. It's a giant gap in the product you're paying for when you're going to, the Mozarteum or Juilliard or any of these places. They're all as bad as each other. They're all fooling everybody, but they are the cage. They are the roll of honor. They are what Bach is talking about. And this next chapter is going to expose them big time. And it'd be great. Where are they? Where's their acknowledgement? Where's their recognition of this? It's non-existent. And it doesn't have to be the top people. It can be anybody in the roll of honor. And you don't think to get where I am today, that I haven't, been in contact with people in the roll of honor? That there aren't roll of honor people who know me, who know I exist. But not a meep from them. Not at all. Even though what we're talking about here, in all that authentic playing movement that's been going on for decades, since the 60s or the 50s or whenever it's been going on since, this should be getting attention. This should be getting talked about. If they believe, if there was any true integrity there at all. But it's not. It's not mentioned. And it's not great if you need, like if you don't recognize. An antique expert should be able to go to a car boot sale and spot the valuable piece. An expert that needs that piece to be presented in a museum behind a velvet rope in order to recognize its qualities or what it is not worth much. The true expert should be able to look on a YouTube video and see what it is, and not need it to be presented in, in Carnegie Hall or on a TED Talk or something like that. To be presented in Lilliput, they should be able to recognize it based on what it is and the merits. If they can't recognize the merits in the playing, well, they are a disgrace to their profession. Truly. And to sort of instigate a reformation or a revolution or whatever, it's not a pleasant business. It can't be all smiles and all this pandering and I know you're not used to that in classical music, because that's all it is. It's all about pandering and this talk, this type of I'm your best friend talk, because a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. They need to sugarcoat the poison they are serving you, because I've addressed it here, some of the poison. It can mean making you an eternal prisoner by taking away the things or those things that you need in order to reach your destination, that you're denied them, whether because they don't at all exist in the cage or they're being kept from you deliberately. Because I think, some of the stuff, there's technical things that the Roll of Honor people can do. Some of the things I'm sharing, I'll bet some of those people at the top know them, and they'll look at that, they see that and they think, oh crap, he's telling them that. And they are not telling them that because it gives them an edge over you. But I am sharing it because I have an edge over them. So I'm like the trillionaire who can give away billions. Whereas they'd be like, they can't afford to give away billions because all they have is their billions. If they gave away billions, they'd have nothing left. So they want to keep them. Whereas I have trillions, so I can afford to give away billions. Because I'll still have lots left over. And I will have, so I can share them that the top people wouldn't share, because that's all they have. The only edge they have is those things that they keep secret. How many insights have you heard from Kissin? And I don't blame him for it, because it's his job is not to share them. And you people, I think, can be happy that I'm not a performer, because if I was, I might not share any of this. And I'm very thankful for those of you who have, acknowledged it, what I'm sharing, and have recognized it as a true testament to your quality as a person. And because, otherwise I have so many, there's people who know me and stuff, and it's revolting, the lack of recognition to the right answer, to the true way to play the piano. And so I thank you, because otherwise I think they're not worth it. They're not worth it. They're all they're good enough is for the cage, is for the Roll of Honor to take the poison that the Roll of Honor served to them. Let them take it, because who cares? You know, I'm not Jesus on the cross. I'm not going to say, forgive them, Lord, and stuff. If I was on the cross, I'd be saying, you know, F them. F the lot of them. But I know there's people out there, and I know there's as well, you know, there's people in the cage who, you know, the cage will affect people. It will affect the way they think. It will affect the way they understand, the way they, and so if they escape the cage, it'll, those negative effects will, it's not a reflection on the people themselves or the potential of the person themselves. It's the captivity. It's what the captivity does to a person. And the Stockholm Syndrome is like, you know, it could be understood an orca in captivity and an orca in the wild. If the orca in captivity feels offended by the orca in the wild, because the orca in the wild has the strength and the majesty and all that, and the orca in captivity has the, you know, the drooped fin and the bad skin and whatever, and let's say that orca feels offended by what the orca in the wild is saying, and saying, look, you look terrible. We would know, as outsiders, we would know that the orca in captivity shouldn't feel bad about themselves, that is not them. It's what the captivity does to them. This is why they look terrible. And we'd know that if that orca was to leave captivity, that it wouldn't take long till he's looking like the wild orca. That he has all the splendor and the magnificence of the wild orca. We'd know that. So it goes the exact same for us. The captivity does things to us. And in the world of music, you become a different person. You'll get in touch with your potential, and you'll see things. And you might even be worse than me in terms of how you go after the role of honor after that. You might even like think I'm over the top or too much now, but you could be admiring my restraint when you're in that position. So, yeah. So it's worth, there's a lot to come, and none of it is repetition or going over. It's constantly building that knowledge. All my videos, it's all been new information added, and the picture is getting bigger and bigger all the time. And by the time I get to the end of this book, it's going to be a big picture that'll be there, and it'll be a complete education. It won't be a complete education. It'll be an education to a level way beyond the role of honor and the state that classical music finds itself today. And you might not agree with it, but that's because you don't have the comparison. You don't have the comparison of how great it could be. And if you could see how great it could be, you'll go, yeah, it was really at rock bottom there. It was the pits. It was dire. And, you know, the professors, they won't. They have to repent. They have to show humility. They have to be prepared, because it's gonna come out. Eventually it'll come out. And at the end of the day, it might be their humility, their humbleness, their, you know, if they show any generosity or whatever, or any integrity and all, those are the things, those are the things that might save them at the end, that they might be most thankful for, and not their piano playing ability, or not their knowledge of music, of piano technique or anything. Those might the things if they rely on those things, they might be the things that they regret the most at the end, because they are all the things They are all false gods, and they all belong to the cage. And who's responsible for the cage, and who's responsible for the world of music? I mean, that's up to, that's, you know, everybody will have their beliefs or ideas or whatever. I think there's a world of science. I think there's a, you know, the universe, existence. You know, what the, let's say the Catholic Church says about God or whatever. That's an interpretation. And their job, ideally, normally, if it was an ideal world, their job would be to constantly address their interpretation and search for the one true God. That first commandment, that is a task. And finding the one true God, that might be the last thing we ever do in our development. That might be the last thing that science ever does. After it's discovered everything there is to discover about existence, about the universe, finding the one true God might be the last thing, might only ever be possible after everything else has been discovered. So I would tend to see it like that. And yeah, the Catholic Church, they should be constantly striving for the correct interpretation and not settling on the one, you know, that they came up with whenever, and just getting like a more sloppy version of that. They should constantly be searching for the correct interpretation. Yeah, I'm going on, sorry. But yeah, that's it. And I'm very happy, those of you following it or who are here with me, I'm very happy that you're here, and I hope I don't want to scare you off. And I'm very happy for anybody else who wants to take notice or try discovering it for themselves. And everybody who escapes the cage, you know, I'll get a happiness from that. Okay, but I can as well, I'm very happy in the world of music. I can just, you know, I'm there. I don't have to turn, you know, look back to the cage anymore, because it's an extremely boring place. It's a horrible place. It's mundane, it's unimaginative, it's just horrible, just horrible. It makes me want to, every time I see it, I want to give up the piano. I don't want to touch the piano anymore. Last time I was in a Roll of Honor environment, I didn't touch the piano for 2 or 3 years afterwards. Not one single moment. That's the effect it had on me. And I was playing like I play, like you see on those videos. And it didn't matter. I didn't want to touch the piano. It's horrible. Yeah, so I'll say goodbye finally. Thanks. Bye.